Um, so this training is designed for people who are familiar with JOSM and then they want to sort of increase your skills or maybe get a refresher on some of the things. Obviously, if you're using JOSM, you are very aware that it has a lot of different tools you can use. So we whittled this down to a number of tools that we think are very useful when it comes to creating data. And in our case, when we're actually validating the data in OSM. So some you're probably going to be familiar with, perhaps some you are not. So there's a number of tools and some tricks that will hopefully make your editing experience and your skill set a little better and a little stronger when you're working with JOSM. So through the presentation today, there will be some slides followed by some live demo. As questions come up, please go ahead and put them right in the chat. And remember to keep yourself on mute while the presentation is going on. But throughout the presentation, there'll be times when our instructors will actually pause for a little bit to address any questions that come up. So in the background, while the presentation is going on, we'll do our best to address any questions that come up. But if you would like to voice those, articulate those verbally, those questions, then you can do so at different times when we pause during the presentation itself. Okay. So this time as well, I'll actually invite you to just say hello in the chat and let us know where you're calling in from today. And while you're doing that, I'll have the hub members briefly introduce themselves. And I'll start with Annika to kick us off.
Everyone, my name is Annika. I'm a recent graduate from the George Washington University. I graduated in May. And I've been working with the Validation Hub for about a year and a half now. Yeah, and I'll be ending my time with the Validation Hub coming up here at the end of August. So it's the last training from me that you guys are going to get.
Awesome. Kayla, across my screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla. I am a senior at GW studying environmental science and geography. And I started my time with Validation Hub a couple months ago, and I am excited to do it throughout the year. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kayla. Flora.
Hi, everyone. I'm a junior at the George Washington University, and I also study geography. And like Kayla, I only joined the Validation Hub a couple of months ago, but I'm very excited to get to know everyone here. And yeah, I'm calling in from France at the moment. Yes.
Awesome. Naza.
Hi, everyone. I'm Naza. I'm a junior at George Washington University. I study environmental science, and I'm currently calling from Chicago, Illinois, in the US.
Fantastic. Next on my list, let me see, is Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm a recent graduate of the George Washington University, like Annika. And I've been with the Hub for about a year and a half. And I'm going to be co-leading this presentation with Annika. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. SB.
Hi, everyone. I'm a second year grad student at George Washington University. I am studying geography. And I have been with the Hub for a couple of months as well. So one of the new people, and I am calling in from Washington, D.C.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Maxwell.
Hi, everybody. Good to have you all here. I'm Maxwell. I'm also a recent graduate at the George Washington University. I've been with the Hub for almost 2 years now, and today I'll be at the chat. So if you have any questions, please place them at the chat, and then we'll try our best to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you, Maxwell. And thank you, everybody, for those introductions. And again, thank you to all of you for showing up today and letting us know where you're calling in from. It's pretty awesome. We're literally a global Zoom call today, which is fantastic. So I'm going to step back and hand the reins over to Annika and Sarah to kick off this presentation. And again, if you have questions, please just put them in the chat and I will address them as soon as we can, as best we can. All right, take it away. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So let me start the slideshow.
Okay, so hello again, everyone. I'm Sarah, and I'm going to be going through the first half of this presentation, and then Annika will do the second half. And I want to remind everyone that there's a recording, and that's going to be posted to the YouthMappers YouTube, and the slides will be sent to everyone. So if you miss something or if your connection gets messed up, you can totally rewatch later or refer back to the slides. But absolutely, you can ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we're going to try to take breaks for questions periodically also. So you've likely got some JOSM experience under your belt already, but maybe you're looking to get more use out of the software and just become a better mapper. So I'm going to quickly review some steps that everyone should do. Everyone needs to take to set up and use JOSM. And JOSM might look slightly differently depending on whether you have a Windows or Mac or other type of computer, but all of the important tools and things that we're going to be going over will be generally in the same area. So once you have JOSM downloaded, you need to sign in with your OSM. Sign in with your OSM username and account information, so all of your edits can be attributed to you. And this GIF here is kind of showing you how to do that. And the steps are listed here, but you go to edit and then preferences, and then again, you log in under connection settings, and then you hit authorize now. And accept the access token. Next, you need to set up the remote control, and this lets you connect your selected projects, connect to your selected projects in the tasking manager, as well as allows you to preload any custom imagery for the project that you're working on. And again, this is in the preferences window. So you find the remote control little icon in settings, and then enable it and hit OK. So it's also super important to have plugins downloaded so you can have all of the tools that we're going to talk about and go over today available to you. The plugins tab is also in the preferences window, and it looks like this little puzzle piece icon. So you can go through the entire list of plugins that are available and read about what they do. But for the purposes of today's training, ideally you would have the buildings plugin downloaded, as well as utils plugin 2, Mapathoner, and Fast Draw. And when you go into JOSM, you can easily download them by typing in the name of the plugin that you want in the search bar. You check the box next to it and then select download list. And so we'll go over what each of these do more in depth later on, but these are the handy ones that we're going to be talking about most today. And then it might also prompt you to update your JOSM software to download your plugins. You know, if you're not using the latest version, then it might get mad at you, but it'll simply prompt you to do that, and it's pretty simple. Okay, so now on to actually using some of these more advanced tools. Let's see. Today, we're going to be touching on all of these listed here. I know it looks like a lot, but we will be demoing them for you throughout the presentation, so you can see a little bit more clearly what each of them do. So unglue and merge, you may have already used, but if not, they're super helpful. The unglue tool can be accessed in the tools window or by the G key on your keyboard, and it's used to separate two nodes or ways that share a common node. So sometimes you'll come across buildings that are connected to each other, or a building that is connected to a road when it shouldn't be. So that's when you would use the unglue tool. And merge, on the other hand, connects two nodes together. And it's also located in the tools window or accessible through the M key. And like it says here, the order of selection matters. So if you select one node and then another, whichever the first node that you selected is will move to the second node. And then we have split and combined way, which you may think sounds a little bit like unglue and merge, but I promise they do different things. So split way can be used to create two ways from one, and this will happen on whatever node you select as the sort of dividing point. So you can split ways using the P key, but it doesn't separate them into two separate roads or ways like unglue does. It just makes two separate ways that are still connected on a node. And you also have to make sure that you select which way you want to separate if there's more than one. For example, if you're separating something at an intersection, there's a chance that there could be several ways there, and you might not want to split them all up. So you would select the node and the way that you wanted to be separated to do that. And next we have the combine way tool, which does the opposite of split way. And you can combine two ways onto a single node using the C key. And it's important to note that the order of selection matters like it did with the merge tool. And like it says here, you can't combine ways that don't share a node. That's why it says at the end, the ends of ways must be merged first. But now I'm going to demo these 4 tools for you guys in JOSM so everyone can see them all a little bit more clearly. So let's see. Let's go here. Okay, so this is what we're going to show the unglue and merge tool on. So I go here, I'm looking at my imagery, and I see that these buildings are not actually connected to one another. So one of the ways that I can separate them is by selecting this node and using the G key. And so now if I click on them, they're no longer combined. Like over here, if I tried to move this building, the other corner would move with it, which is not what we want. Or I can select the node and then go up here in the tools window and do the same thing. Unglue ways is right there. And one thing I learned recently that's pretty helpful is you can see here that this way is connected to a bunch of buildings, and obviously we don't want that. So if you have a situation like this where there's a bunch of things that you want to unglue at once, you can actually just select the entire way and use the G key. And now it's highlighted those nodes that were previously connected, and now they are all unglued from the way there, and then you could go in and make sure your buildings are squared and stuff like that. So there's a lot of instances like that over here. The same thing works for buildings. You can select just the entire building and hit G, and now it is unglued. And then the other thing I wanted to show you guys in this section was the merge tool. So you can see here that these 2 roads probably should be connected. So what you could do is you select one node and then the other, and then hit M, and the first moved to the second. So I can show you that again over here. Select your first node, then the second, and then again, it's also in the tools menu. You can just go to merge nodes. Anybody have any questions? If not, I'm just going to move on to combine and split way examples here. So let's see, here we have this. Well, to me, this looks like it should be one road, and maybe this one over here should be separate. So if I want to split the way here, I'm going to select this node, and it's already separated from this one, so I don't actually have to select the way. So now I'm going to hit the P key, and then you see the whole thing gets highlighted. And now this road is separated from these 2 ways right here. But again, I'm looking at it and I think that these 2 should be one. So I'm going to use my shift key to select them both and then press C on the keyboard. And now you can see that the tags over here from the original road, you know, the name moved, they all got transferred onto this one way. So we can go up here, do the same thing. See, they have the same name already. Amazing. It's also here in the tools window. Let's see. Oh, it's up here. Combine way. Oh, and now we're getting an error. So we look at it, and those were actually 2 different kinds of roads. They were tagged as different highway values. So if I was mapping this, I would say, oh, I think these are both residential. So you select that and then apply your changes. And now the tags for the entire way all match. All right. And then another thing that these tools are useful for, excuse me, is if, say, I'm over here and I'm like, oh, I think this whole area has a fence around it. You know, I see like they have this labeled as barrier wall. But then I'm like, well, I don't think there's actually a wall here. So I want to remove this section. So if I wanted to, I couldn't just hit P after selecting this node, because that will give me this error because it's a circular way. So this is one of those cases where you would have to select 2 nodes and then use your P key. And now it's a separate way within there. And if I actually wanted to remove the whole thing, then I could click on the nodes and use my G key that we learned from earlier and unglue it. And now it's completely removed and I could use this object somewhere else in the imagery. Maybe there's a wall somewhere else. All right, I'm gonna return back if there's no questions. Okay. Let's see. Next, we're going to talk about a tool that can add nodes at an intersection where the node might be missing. So this tool actually comes from the utils plugin 2 plugin that we mentioned earlier. It's super helpful to have that downloaded. And this tool can be found under the More Tools menu, and also accessed by using the Shift and I keys together. So you select both of the ways that you want to have a shared node, and then you would hit Shift and I, and it just creates a node for you between them. And then another cool tool is the Create Multi-Polygon tool. So sometimes a building might be a square, but maybe it has a courtyard or some sort of other open space within that square. So this tool will add a relationship between the inner and the outer objects or buildings, and the tool will add that relationship to the tags of the object. So, you might have the outer building and then the inner courtyard, but JOSM will recognize those two objects as being related and part of one building together. So you do this, sorry, excuse me, by selecting both of the ways and then hitting the Control and B key. All right. Next, we have Replace Geometry, which also comes from the utils plugin 2 plugin, and it can replace the geometry of one object with another that you create while retaining the metadata and the tags of that original object. So if you're mapping and you see a poorly drawn object, maybe there's way too many nodes, or it's just too messy for you to fix quickly and simply, you can replace that poorly drawn object without deleting the work of another mapper. The keyboard commands for this tool are Control, Shift, and G, but it's also in the More Tools menu, which I'll show you when we go back to the JOSM demo. And JOSM knows that the new object that you create is the newer one, so it will preserve the tags and the information about the older one. So now we can see those tools a little more clearly. Let's go back to JOSM. I lost my mouse. Okay, let's see. So this will be a pretty quick demo here. See, we zoom in. I have this road, and they clearly overlap, but they don't have a node between them. So I'm going to select them both using my Shift key and hit Shift I, and now there's a node there. Do the same thing here, Shift and Shift. Oh, it might be in More Tools. Here we go. Yeah, add node at intersection. So there you go. And now to demo this guy. Let's turn this layer on. Okay. So looking at this imagery, I'm looking around and I'm like, this building over here, it has too many nodes. It's got an extrusion. It's not that bad. I could probably fix it without using Replace Geometry, but just for our purposes here, I'm going to demo it here. So I'm going to move this building out of the way because I want to replace it. I'm going to use my Buildings plugin and start to draw the building the way I want to. And I say, okay, I think that looks good. So now I'm going to select them both, and then it's under More Tools. And one of the helpful things in the window at the top here, you can see it says Replace Geometry, so I can click, but then it also gives you the keyboard commands in case you ever forget those. So I replaced geometry, and now that old building is gone. But if you select the new building, the author, that's not my username, that's whoever created it originally. So it's still attributed to them. And I don't think there are any buildings on this imagery where there's like a courtyard or something, but we're gonna pretend like there's one here just for the sake of the demo. So if I actually wanted to create a multi-polygon here, then, this is my fake courtyard. I'm gonna draw it. And now I select both of those, and you can use Control B. or it is also, let's see. It's down here in the tools window. So now I can click on it, and now in the tags or relations section, it knows that it's a member of a multi-polygon. And this is the inner way, whereas this is the outer way over here. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Sarah. I had a question.
Go for it.
So I saw when you were replacing the geometry, you selected one building first and then the next. And I was curious, does the order of selecting the buildings when replacing the geometry matter?
Okay, I'm not quite sure, but I don't think it matters because JOSM knows which object is the new one and which one is the old one. So someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that JOSM just knows that whatever one I just drew is the new one, and I want to preserve the tags from the other one, if that makes sense.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
It knows which one from the history. It knows which one is older, so it knows what to preserve. Exactly right.
Awesome. Okay. Going to go back. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is not a specific tool that comes with JOSM or a plugin, but it's kind of a useful strategy to draw your buildings more accurately. So the way it works, sometimes you have a building where you have two or more, extrusions coming out, and you think that maybe they should be aligned, but it's kind of hard to draw them exactly the same distance away from the building. So you draw a line between the protruding parts of the building that you want to be the same size or aligned with each other. And then you use that new line that you've drawn, and you hit the Q key to square the building once again. And that sort of aligns it with the new, like the two sections that you want to be aligned. This is a lot easier to see in a demonstration. So if it's not making sense quite yet, I'll show you guys in a moment. And then another thing we can do to clean up our mapping is aligning buildings with one another. So this can be helpful if you have a bunch of similar buildings, maybe all on the same street, or if it's just clear that they should all be aligned and maybe they weren't drawn that way. And the way you do this is you select all of the buildings that you want to be aligned, as well as 2 reference nodes, and that will align the buildings, and then you hit the Q key, and that will move all of the buildings so they're in line and parallel or perpendicular to those 2 reference nodes that you selected. And then the last tool that I'm going to talk about before doing one last demo and passing it off to Annika is the validation tool. And we also have entire trainings on validation, but you can learn a lot more there. I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of this tool that comes with JOSM, and you can use it for yourself or to help double check your own mapping. So it's super helpful for finding errors in an area that maybe has a lot of data, or that maybe you just didn't catch when you were scanning the data and the imagery yourself. So like it says here, it categorizes problems into errors, warnings, and then basically other suggestions for you. So you want to do your best to fix anything that it highlights, especially errors, but sometimes you'll find that you can't solve the problems that it's highlighting without local knowledge of the area that you're mapping. So one problem that I run into all the time is a warning for unnamed ways, which means that someone has drawn a way or a road, but they haven't given it a tag for the street name. But obviously, unless I'm mapping like my hometown or something, I'm probably not going to have any idea what that street is called. So that's a warning that you could just go ahead and ignore. So keep that in mind when you're using the validation tool, because you're not always going to be able to fix all of the errors that it highlights. All right. Let's go back to JOSM. Oh, here we go. And here we go. So I'm going to show you guys the using auxiliary lines trick and align buildings tools. So here I'm looking at this building and I see that these 2 sections should probably be lined up with each other. I need to square this building, obviously, but the way that works is I'm going to click on this node and then hit A on my keyboard to add, and then connect it to that node there. And now I'm going to hit Shift. So my line that I've just drawn is selected and the building, and then use my Q key. And now that these 2 are aligned, I can sort of move this around, maybe turn it a little, and now they're in line. And then I can go ahead and use the function key to delete this because that's just a new line I created. There's no tags. It doesn't need to be there. You know, I'm not deleting anyone else's work. And now these two extruded sections are in line with each other. So I'll just go ahead and show you one more time. You're going to select a node, draw a line there, and then make sure you select both of them, square them, and then, you know, you can sort of play around with it. And then you would go ahead and delete that line that you just created. And now I'm looking over here and I'm like, these buildings look like they should be aligned with each other, but they're not. So I'm going to hit Shift on my keyboard, select them all, and then I think this building right here looks the best. So I'm going to use that as my reference nodes. I just select 2 nodes from there, hit Q, and now they're all in line. And again, you might have to shift them around a little bit. That is totally fine. And then let's see. Let's zoom to this layer here. I think this is where I wanted to show my validation tool. So I'm here. Now, sometimes when you open up JOSM, the validation results window might not be there, or, you know, sometimes I accidentally delete it and I go, oh no, where is it? But it's super helpful or super easy to add it back. You just go to this Windows tab up at the top here, and there's a lot of different things you can add, but I'm interested in validation results. So you just click it and then it comes right back here. So maybe periodically while you're mapping or at the end of mapping a task, you can just click this check mark, and then I've got a bunch of warnings here so you can see what's going on. And then you can also drop them down even further. And I say, oh, crossing building in residential area. So zoom to problem. And then this is the residential area that they're talking about. These are the buildings that they're, you know, running into. So you can kind of just select that and try to correct those problems as best as you can. And then, you know, I run it again. And because I moved the residential area, now my number of warnings has dropped down. So I'm not going to go through all the warnings that it has for me here, but here's that unnamed ways error that I was talking about. I obviously don't know the name of that road, so I can't do much about it, but that is all I have, unless there are any questions, or if anybody wants me to go over a tool again, I can totally do that.
Yeah, how to fix that error generated by map with AI?
Okay, let's see. Let me get rid of this guy. Oh, is that an error that's on here or just that you've come across?
Yeah, sometime I validate, I got that error, so I asked that.
So I've seen some of those too myself. Sometimes, if you know, there's the AI mapping that's been done on the task that you're working on, I feel like the most common one is that it doesn't connect to other ways. Then you'll just have to investigate those sort of on a case-by-case basis. And maybe you could draw or add a connection to the way or whatever the problem seems to be. That's one of the ones that if I'm not quite sure what it is, I tend to ignore those because the tasks I'm usually working on don't usually deal with the map with AI stuff. So if it's not something that you drew or that's part of your project that you're working on, then I might just leave that for the time being. If there are no other questions, then I'm gonna stop sharing and pass it over to Annika.
Thank you, Sarah, for doing the beginning of the presentation for us. Give me just one moment and I can switch over to the last half. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
awesome. Okay, so in the beginning of our presentation, we talked a lot about tools that are in the JOSM platform that maybe you didn't know about and can be very useful. The second half of the presentation is going to deal a little bit more with plugins, which are additional tools that don't come with like the base version of JOSM when you download it, but they can be added on additionally, and they're extremely helpful. Like Sarah said, all of this is going to be recorded. All these resources will be provided to you at the end. And at the end of the presentation, we have several slides that just have links to very good resources, links to very useful plugins that you can use. So you'll be able to find every plugin that I discuss at the end of the presentation today. The very first one I'm going to talk about is the Mark Scene Viewer. Mark Scene is just a plugin that essentially it has a square which is the size of what you view in the JOSM screen. And as you move across whatever task you're mapping or validating, it'll color the area that you've already viewed. This is extremely useful when you're working on really, really large projects, or maybe projects that have a lot of density to them. And it just kind of helps you keep an eye on, where you've already been, what you've already looked at. So you're not going over the same places multiple times, but you're also not leaving out places that could have errors that we're just not seeing. And when I move to the JOSM demo, I'll show you where on your screen you can find this plugin, but just as it says in the slide right here, that it'll be in a new window on the right panel of JOSM. Additionally, there's also the search function. This actually is not a plugin, but it's just, a tool in JOSM that people don't really utilize or don't use a lot because it's kind of intimidating at first. But if you're looking for a specific type of feature, a specific name in a project, the search function can be really useful. And so to use the search function, you use key equals value tags, just like you would for, assigning a preset or assigning an attribute to a way or a building. So examples are building equal yes, like you guys are very familiar with. You can search by, type of feature. So if you want all the nodes to come up, if you want all the ways to come up. And to get access to your search function in JOSM, there are a few ways to do that. The shortcut on your keyboard is Control F or Command F if you're using a Mac. At the very top of JOSM, there's a magnifying glass icon, or you could just go to the edit menu and click on the search button. This is just an example of what the search box will look like once you find it and pull it up in JOSM. As you can see over here on the right, you can search by one of JOSM's presets. So you don't even have to type anything in. You can type a specific search right up here in the search bar. You can filter what type of results you'd like to see. And then here is just a helpful box that kind of gives you examples of different things to search. The search tool can be a little finicky. You have to type things in the correct way for it to bring up what you're looking for. So the hints can be helpful just in case you want to search something, but you maybe don't know the correct way to type it. Should there be a space here? Should I put it in parentheses? Things like that. And then these are just a few examples. Again, just to show you kind of what you can use the search function for, because not a lot of people know exactly how to use it once they see it. And also just to show you how the way that you type into the search function will affect the results that you get back. So you can see here, name will select all the elements with the given name, but if you use an equal sign instead, it will search all elements for this name, including lowercase and uppercase. It'll be case sensitive as you put it. So these are just a few examples of different search functions. Like I said, you can search by the type of feature, you can search by the name of features, you can search by addresses. If there's a special value in the name that you're searching for, in this example, there's a space, a white space. You're going to want to put it in parentheses, so that way it includes those special characters. You can search by what time the object was last created or edited. Like I said, you can search by just the normal JOSM presets. And then you can also search depending on the number of nodes in your building. So if you just wanted to pull up all the square buildings, you could search by building nodes 4. If you wanted to pull up all the buildings, you know, all the L-shaped buildings, all the buildings with 6 nodes, you could do that as well. And I am just going to give you guys a quick example of those 2 tools. And then I'll come back and jump into some more plugins for you guys. Okay, so this is my JOSM screen. The first tool that I'm going to show you guys an example of is a search function. So like I said, on the keyboard controls are Command F or Control F. Up here on the very top, your horizontal toolbar in JOSM, you can just click on this magnifying glass to pull up the search function. Or you can come over here also in the top toolbar, just hit edit, and then come down to search. You see here you have an option to search for objects by preset, or you can also just open the normal search dialog box that I showed you previously. And we're just going to do a few example searches for you guys in this change set. So let's say we wanted to search for all of our squared buildings. What we're going to do is type in building node 4, and then this should highlight every building that only has 4 nodes. Oh, I'm not sure exactly why that didn't work. Let's see if we try and give it a window 4 to 6 nodes. See, this is what I mean by the search function can be very finicky with the way that you type things in. Oh, I see what it is. I typed building node instead of building nodes. That was the error. See, that's what I mean by you have to be very specific at the search function sometimes. So it definitely takes some practice, takes some getting used to. But you see here, it's highlighted every building that has between 4 and 6 nodes. So you can search that way. You can also search by name. So say you wanted to find the name of a specific street. Here we are putting the name in parentheses because it does include spaces. If the name of your street was just one word, you could just search without the parentheses and it would still bring up the same results. Just type that in one more time.
Spell a Greek wrong in your search. Spelling matters.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. See, like I said, I am a seasoned professional when it comes to JOSM, and the search function still eludes me. So don't feel bad if it takes you a while to get used to it. I was just simply spelling the name of the street that I live on incorrectly. That's fine. So here we have the name key, the parentheses, the name of the road spelled correctly. Make sure to double check. And then when you hit the search key, it'll highlight just that road that shares that name. So like I said, this tool can be super useful. It does take a little while to get used to. If it's the first time using the search key, I would recommend kind of searching by these presets, just so you can kind of get a feel of, you know, how it works and what it's going to bring up for you. The second tool I'm going to show you guys is the mark scene tool. So there are a few different places you can find that as well. When you first download the plugin, it should pop up in your right hand kind of, you know, workspace. It should pop up with a separate window, much like the validation tool that Sarah showed us. If for some reason it doesn't pop up here or you cannot find it, you should also be able to go to the left-hand side of your screen, scroll down until you see this little pink square, and the tool is also right there for you. Additionally, you can come up here to view and you can hit the mark scene tool. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna clear that very quickly. So up here under the view panel at the top of your screen, this is where you're going to be able to start recording the areas that you've already gone over, where you can clear areas. If you're, if you finish one task, you want to start another, you need a clean slate. And you can also set the size of your viewport. This is important because if you are zoomed out too far and you're not at your viewport size, it won't allow you to record anything. So if you come over here to the right, you can see that our mark scene box has a big X through it. That means that we're zoomed out too far. We're not close enough for it to really register that we're looking at things thoroughly. So we're just going to zoom in here. Now you can see that the X has gone away and it's pink in the center. This means that we're at the right size, and now we can begin recording. For tasks that are really, really dense and have a lot of information on them or a lot of buildings, you may want to make your viewport smaller. For tasks that are maybe kind of deserted, maybe you're mapping an area that has a lot of forest or your natural area, you can set it out farther and get through those tasks a little bit quicker. But once you are at the appropriate size for your viewport, you come over here to view, mark scene, and just click record scene areas. And now whenever you move across the task that you're working on, it should turn pink, as you see down here in the right-hand corner. And that just lets you know, like, hey, I've already looked at this area. I've already edited whatever is within it. And I can move on to the next task or the next spot. And you can see it's just gradually turning pink the more and more I go over it. Whenever you're finished with mark scene, come up here, hit record scene areas again to get it to stop recording. You can see the pink is no longer following my rectangle in this bottom right corner. And then if you need to clear the areas, just hit the clear button and it will go away. So those are those two tools for you guys. I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint and continue with some more plugins unless anybody has any questions at the moment. Okay, for all good, I'll just keep on going. These next couple of slides are kind of a little bit of a review of something that Sarah discussed earlier, which are relations and your multi-polygon buildings. So a relation just kind of refers to anything that requires more than one object to define it. So as Sarah demoed, maybe a building with a courtyard, maybe a lake, with an island within it, anything like that. And the four main types of relations you'll come across in OSM are multi-polygons, roots, boundaries, and restrictions. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to be focusing on multi-polygons. As Sarah demoed earlier, you can just use the tool, Create Multi-Polygon tool in JOSM to do this. The workflow would be, first you would trace the outside of the building or the exterior of whatever feature you're trying to map, and then draw the interior. You'd select both of them using the Shift key, and then just hit the Create Multi-Polygon tool. Then it's always good practice to check and make sure your tagging is correctly. The object will automatically be tagged as a multi-polygon. However, you will need to add in tags such as building yes, or any more specific tagging that you may have. This is just kind of an example of what that should look like. So down here in the bottom left, we have a building that would be considered a multi-polygon. And then up here on the right-hand side, this is the pop-up box that you will get after you create your multi-polygon. And that is just to make sure that, all the relations are correct and it's been assigned the correct tagging. The next plugin I'm going to discuss is the Mapathon plugin. This is an extremely useful plugin, not only because it includes multiple tools, so it does more than one thing, but because it really streamlines your mapping process. It allows you to map multiple buildings at one time of multiple different shapes. It allows you to pick residential areas and map those very quickly. And it allows you to fix little errors such as, duplicated buildings or unsquared buildings. It allows you to fix a lot of those little errors at one time. So in order to find the Mapathoner plugin after you download it, of course, you download a plugin by going to the edit window, preferences, plugins, then you search and download Mapathoner. After you install it, you'll be able to find it on the top toolbar in JOSM, and it'll be on the right-hand side. It'll be its own separate pull down that'll just say Mapathoner, so you shouldn't have to do a lot of searching for it. And there are multiple tools within the plugin. So the first that we're going to talk about are the batch tools. And these tools are the ones that help you map multiple buildings or multiple structures all at the same time. You can do this with circle buildings, orthogonal buildings, which are just your typical squared buildings, 4 nodes, and you can do L-shaped buildings. I can explain better what this will look like when I do the demo in just a moment. But just for the sake of letting you know what's on the slide, the batch circle buildings, you map those by drawing the diameter. The orthogonal buildings will be mapped by selecting 3 nodes out of 4 of the building. And the batch L-shaped buildings are mapped by selecting 4 nodes out of the total 6 in an L-shaped building. The Mapathoner plugin also has the select tools. And these are tools that are extremely useful for fixing those pesky little errors that you might see all throughout a task. So selecting duplicate buildings, if there's 2 buildings on top of each other and it's only supposed to represent 1 building in the imagery, sometimes this can happen when people use different imageries, or I don't know, people don't double check the work of the people that come before them occasionally, so you'll get these buildings on top of each other. It's an easy way to select all of those and get rid of them easily. Selecting non-orthogonal buildings, these are buildings that should be squared, but they're not. And then selecting non-rounded buildings, these are circular buildings that maybe aren't that perfect circle. And it just lets you select any features that have these issues and fix them all at one time. The next plugin we're going to discuss is going to be the Fast Draw plugin. Fast Draw is very useful when it comes to mapping really large, weirdly shaped features. I like to use this for water bodies, lakes and coasts a lot. You can also use it for, farmland, forest land, anything that just has a large, odd shape, and it's going to take multiple nodes to map. So once you install it, I will show you on the demo where to find it, but it'll be on your left-hand tool menu. And then you just hold down the space bar and just trace around the object like you would with a pen or a pencil. And then after you're done tracing, you hit enter and JOSM will automatically clean it all up, get rid of the excess nodes for you, and then you can add in whatever tagging you may need to add to that feature. This is just an example of what it looks like when you use the Fast Draw plugin. So when you're holding down space and tracing, all of the nodes will be yellow. Once you hit enter, they'll turn red. It'll be a completed feature, and then you can add whatever tags you'd like. Alrighty, and I know that was a lot to digest at one time. The Mapathoner plugin especially has a lot of components to it. So I'm hoping that this demo that I'm going to give you in just a second will make things a little more clear. Just for the sake of reiterating the first few slides we had about multi-polygons, I know Sarah demoed doing a multi-polygon that represented a house with a courtyard. I'll show you a slightly more natural one. We're going to do this small pond right here that has this island in the center. And so what we're going to do to create that multi-polygon is we're going to go around this feature. Oop, don't want that connecting. There we go. We're also going to go around this feature in the center, creating our two separate shapes here. Now, while holding down the Shift key, you should be able to select both of those. Go over to Tools and create multi-polygon. Now that it's turned purple, you can see that it's being registered as a multi-polygon. We are still going to need to add in a normal tag that tells us what this feature is. It's just a small, we'll say it's a small lake. There we go. Yeah, there we go. And the water lake tag is in here. So that is just kind of a review of the multi-polygon tool. Now we're going to move into the Mapathon and Fast Draw plugins for you guys. I think I'll demonstrate Fast Draw first, just because it has less moving parts, less steps. So after you download your plugins, which if you don't know where to find the plugins, they are under the Edit tab. Go down here to Preferences, Plugins, and then you can search and download for plugins from this list. After you've done that, the Fast Draw plugin will be found over here on the left-hand side of the JOSM screen, and the icon is just represented by a little pencil. So what you do is you're just going to click on that icon and place your first node of whatever feature you're going to start mapping. Hold down the space key and just take your mouse and trace it around that feature. Doesn't have to be perfect because JOSM will help you clean it up. Just trace it around. Until you're finished. Then let go of the space key, close that feature, and hit enter. There you go. And you see how when I hit enter, JOSM kind of cleaned it up a little bit. There's less nodes than when I originally had. And now that we've hit enter and it's become, let me just fix this little, that little node. So after you hit enter and it completes it, it kind of gives you the opportunity to, fix anything up that you think might be a little wonky. And then you can just add in your tag, and it'll be a fully tagged feature that took you only a few seconds to complete. So that is the Fast Draw tool. I can show you guys that one more time. So you come over here, hit Fast Draw, start your first node, trace your feature using the mouse and holding the space button. And then just hit enter. There you go. Add your tag. Easy peasy. Like I said, you still might have to clean it up a little bit, but it does significantly reduce the amount of time it takes you to map odd features like this. Okay. Now I'm going to demonstrate the Mapathoner plugin for you guys, which is going to be located up at the very top toolbar, all the way to the right. And then when you click on Mapathoner, you can see it'll pull down and let you select all of the tools that this plugin offers. So the first tool we're going to show you are the batch buildings tool. The first one on the list is the batch circle buildings. As I said while reading the slides, these are drawn by spanning the diameter of the circle. So let's start here. Let's say we're going to try and map these two silos. So we would draw across the entire diameter, and then without separating the features. So you don't need to draw one feature at a time and call it done like this. You're going to continue on to the next one and do the exact same thing. Let's say, let's say we had one more here, do it like that. And so this might look a little funny, but when you come up here to the Mapathon tool and hit batch circle building, it'll automatically use those diameters to make a perfect circle for you. And they won't be connected. Even though you're drawing the diameters connected, the features will be separate objects. You won't have to worry about that. Additionally, they will already be tagged as buildings. So when using the Mapathon tool, you do not have to add in the building yes tag. The next one are the batch orthogonal buildings. So this is for making multiple square buildings at one time. And to do this, you are going to use 3 nodes. So what that looks like visually is just going up, hitting 3 out of 4 corners, and then just moving right next to the next building without even disconnecting them. So we're coming down. This is the first corner, second corner, and third corner. And just do this for however many buildings you need to map in one go. Come down and hit batch orthogonal buildings, and it makes them all for you. They are already squared. They are already marked as buildings. Truly speeds up the mapping process so much. The very last one are your batch L-shaped buildings. See, there's an L-shaped building right here. I want a couple. Okay, we'll use these 2. The batch L-shaped building, it might look a little weird. It might take you a little while to kind of get the hang of it. But for this one, you're going to select 4 nodes. So what you want to do is you want to select the nodes at the end of each protrusion. And to do that, you're going to select the first 2, then cut across kind of this negative space and select the other 2 nodes at the end. Come do it for this one over here. And you can see it doesn't matter how far away the features are, as long as they're connected, the Mapathon plugin will still work. So we're going to get these 2 nodes right here, cut across that negative space where it forms the L, and then do the other 2 nodes on the other side as well. And now when we hit batch L-shaped building, those buildings will be generated for us, already tagged and already squared. So those are all the batch tools in the Mapathon plugin. The next tool I'm going to show you is Pick Residential Area, which by far is not the flashiest or the most impressive tool in the Mapathon arsenal. I think it's pretty useful though, and it's worth showing. So to use the Pick Residential Area, what you're going to do is just select however many features are in the area that you want to mark as residential. We can see here, this is a little neighborhood. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and just try to go across and get as many of these houses in as I can. Now that they're all selected, you come up here and hit Pick Residential Area, and it will automatically mark off an area that will include all of the features and homes within it. And sometimes you might have to tweak it a little bit, kind of get it the way you want it, but generally it's pretty good about including most of the buildings and not going over. See, had to fix it right there, but usually it's pretty good. Next are going to be the select tools. Like I said, these tools are super useful when it comes to, fixing errors in one fell swoop. So the first one is the Select Duplicate Buildings tool. You just go up to Mapathon and click it. Anything that comes up is showing you that these 2 features have more than a 50% overlap. So they probably represent the same feature on the imagery, and we don't need 2 of them. So what you're going to do in that case, select all the duplicate buildings, come here. Best practice is usually we don't like to delete things that other people have created. So I would recommend kind of, check the tags, make sure there's no specific tagging if it's just a building. And then maybe look and say, what around here isn't mapped that I can come and move this feature down to? So that way it's no longer duplicated, but it's also, we're not deleting somebody else's work. However, that's not always going to be possible. Sometimes, you know, there was another duplicate building, I thought. Sometimes that won't be possible. You know, let's say this duplicated building was still here. Everything else is already adequately mapped. It has no special tags really. Then that would be an appropriate time to just delete the building. But always try to do something with those first before you just get rid of them. The next tool, the select tool that Mapathon gives us, select non-orthogonal buildings. So selecting this will just show us any building that is not completely squared, as we see here. After we use this select tool, we can just hit Q and it will square all the buildings all at one time for us. So we don't have to go through doing each one. And then when we hit select again, none of them should pop up because they've all been squared. And then the last one is very similar. Select non-rounded buildings. I doubt there will be any since the only round buildings we made were right here. I'll just mess them up a little bit just for the sake of demonstrating this. So we would say, you know, select non-rounded buildings. These would show up. And then you just hit the O key and it's going to make them all perfect circles for you. So that is the Mapathoner plugin. I know it's kind of a lot to digest, but it is really extremely useful. Probably one of my favorite plugins. If nobody has any questions, I'm happy to, you know, to show you guys something over again. If not, I will move back to the presentation and wrap it up, but I'll just pause for a second.
Yes, I got a couple of questions here. Phil asked about the L-shaped buildings. You always just have to map the shortest sides, like those outer parts, to generate accurate building shape, or can you use other nodes?
I would say yes. I'll just get rid of this building just to duplicate, just to demonstrate. Whenever you try, originally when I started using this tool, I would kind of try to do it, you know, something like it said 4 nodes. So I would kind of try to do something, you know, maybe like this. And it turns out, yeah, it gives you like this weird kind of like figure-8 type building. Or if you wanted to kind of get rid of these, hit the 4 corners like this, kind of mapping from the inside of the building and not the outside. That one works. It looks a little funky, but it does work. I think for me personally, the easiest way to visualize it and make sure I consistently do it correctly is to go along the outside of the building like this. You don't have to do that if that's more confusing for you. But you do, in order to map the L-shaped building correctly, it does have to be these outside corners. It can't be, it has to be the nodes like on the outside of the protrusion. It can't be these inside corners where the L forms, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense to me. It seems to work that way. There was another question earlier on about, is there any tools in JOSM to analyze OSM data gaps in a particular place? And I don't know of any offhand. I don't know if anybody else on the line here knows of a way to identify data gaps in a using the tools in JOSM to identify data gaps in your area. You're zoomed in somewhere. I know there's let's see, there is OSM Analytics that I'll post this in the chat. OSM Analytics has a page looking at some gaps that they've done, I think, using AI to look at features that are there. And then I don't know if that's just looking at features that exist or where they expect features to exist. I'm not sure what the algorithm is that you use for that. But I know that sort of outside of JOSM obviously sort of identifies potential gaps in OSM. But as for tools in JOSM, I don't know if anybody on the line knows the tool in JOSM that will allow us to identify gaps if we're looking in a particular area on it. If I'm understanding the question properly, if there is a tool to identify gaps in the area you're looking at, so you can sort of maybe focus your attention there for mapping.
I am not aware of a tool or a plugin just because I don't use it in my everyday. But I mean, there are so many. If you went and perused the JOSM plugin, selection page, you might be able to find something that would work for that. But off the top of my head, I'm not aware of one.
Fair point. Yeah, there's so many different tools in JOSM, and we're just scratching the surface here. I mean, literally, we could have a training, every month of the year doing different tools within JOSM, and we're not running out of material, So yeah, I think that's many of us have something else to add to that. If not, then we'll move on to the next part. Yeah, we have about 18 minutes left or so.
There are no other questions. I will move back to the PowerPoint. Okay. And the next few slides are just going to be useful resources for you guys. This one is the JOSM keyboard shortcuts cheat. So all these shortcuts we've been talking about using on your keyboard for these various tools and plugins. This is a helpful visual representation that just shows you what they all are. And then they're also listed down here. There's so many, and you guys will, you don't have to worry about trying to take it down from the slide or anything, because you'll have access to this at the end of the presentation. So don't stress about that. And then this is just a list of other very helpful plugins. Some of them we discussed today, like FastDraw and Mapathoner. The other ones, maybe, we didn't get time to do those today, maybe in a future training if there's enough interest. But this is just suggestions from us on plugins that we find particularly helpful or ones that we use a lot. The buildings tool plugin is extremely helpful. The utils plugin, this one has a lot of little things that add up to be super helpful, things like that. And it's all about your preference. As a mapper, what it is that you're mapping, the way that you like to map. So I encourage you to kind of download a few, play around with them, see if you like them, see if you don't. You might just find one that makes your life a lot easier. And then we just have links for helpful resources for you guys. So these are, how to use the JOSM search function in their wiki, the Mapathoner plugin link, just a few links from OSM about, what relations are, the types of relations. So if you have any questions that you don't feel like were answered in this presentation, hopefully some of these resources will allow you to get that sorted out. Yeah, and that's all I have for you guys today. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure me, Sarah, or another hub member would be happy to answer them. But now I'll turn it back over to Professor Hinton.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah and Annika. And Annika, just go back one slide where the QR code is there. You guys, well, as we mentioned, you'll have access to this slide presentation in a few days when we get the recording completed, and we'll get that out to everybody. But this QR code will take you to a Google Doc we created with a bunch of those resources for data creation and for validation, and just a great resource of different wikis and demos and things that other organizations have put up online that will help you make you a better mapper, basically. So try to consolidate a bunch of that stuff into one location. And again, you'll have access to that whenever you want it. So yeah, so are there any other questions? Is there anything you would like Sarah or Annika to go over one more time? And or maybe a demo one more time, or perhaps explain a little more in depth? We're happy to do that. We have a few more minutes. We sort of set this time to be an hour and a half, so we have about 15 minutes of time left. If there are any questions at all, we're happy to field them. Yes, the Mapathoner is a very cool tool. if you had any doubt about it, you saw it demoed, and of course, Annika's enthusiasm probably came through a little bit. She loves the tool.
I'm a big Mapathon fan. Yes.
Thanks, Phil. It was great seeing a lot of familiar names and our faces on this call. So happy you guys come back and took another training. We're going to continue to do these. The next training that we'll do will actually be our intro to JOSM training, and that we haven't got it on the books yet, but during this fall semester for us here, we're hoping to do our plan is to do an intro to JOSM. We'll do this advanced JOSM again, and then we'll actually do one in validation as well. Okay, so the plan here is to have those about a month apart, with the idea that if you're new to JOSM, then you'll start using it, and hopefully come to the advanced JOSM to up your skills a little more. And then once you're more comfortable with JOSM, come and take in the validation. We do it in this order because the primary tool used in the validation process is the JOSM editor, right? So that's why we do it in this way. So stay tuned to the YouthMappers channel, and we will be announcing the next training probably sometime in the next month or so. Hope to do that in probably late September. And again, have those 3 trainings about a month apart, give you lots of time to practice. And that's the thing, like with any software, the more time you spend in front of the software, just practicing with it, the better you'll be. And I actually saw somebody on one of the OSM Slack channels post a picture of their keyboard because they're an avid JOSM user, and a few of the sort of primary keys that particular user uses, be it the A or the S or the B, and the, for adding features, for selecting features, for creating buildings and whatnot, the actual text on the keyboard has worn off because the person's using those shortcuts all the time with one hand, and then their hand is on a mouse on the other hand, sort of identifying features and selecting things. So obviously a very avid JOSM user, and have a few shortcuts that they use all the time to make their workflow a little more efficient. All right, any closing comments or questions before we sign off? Awesome, glad you guys enjoyed it. Cheat sheet from the web, probably. Honestly, I can't remember where we got it from. That someone's asking to download it from the web. That's a great question. I'm not sure. Probably you have to do a little searching online, but we'll have it, pardon me, on the slide presentation. And everybody who registered for this particular training will get an email with this presentation. You'll be able to grab it from there if you like. Very welcome. Very welcome. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, yeah, on one of the links there, it showed up. Yeah, wiki, JOSM wiki page. Excellent. All right, folks, if there are no other questions, I want to say again, thank you very, very much for your attention today. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Sarah. Thank you for Annika for leading us through this training. Great job. And we will hope to see some of you guys again at another training in the future. If it's not one of ours, then something else that YouthMappers put on. Just stay tuned and follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all those social media channels, and you'll be up to date on everything that's going on. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have fun mapping. And if you have questions, feel free to email us anytime. Okay. All right. Take care, folks, and see you later. Shut things down shortly.